Hi everyone, my name is Austin Meyer and I'm a product director here at CenterCode. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the 5 core roles that every CV professional should master. And to kick us off, I thought I'd talk a little bit about who I am, how I got here, and why I'm talking to you about CV professionals. I started as a junior account manager in sales, and frankly I didn't do too well as a salesperson here at CenterCode. The day came when I thought I'd be fired, and surprisingly I was asked to help the managed services side of the business. In reality, my boss saw that my talent lay elsewhere and invited me to help him develop what we were dubbing our second-gen service offering. Until that point, the services we were offering were ad hoc and followed only a few processes and guidelines, while providing insights that weren't always actionable. I stepped in to help reshape our new offering to accomplish 2 important things. 1, build out a framework that could be repeated by non-experts, and 2, provide better, more actionable results. Over the next 3 years, I ran tests for Fortune 50 companies and eventually took over running the department. In my time running the department, I went from 1 person in our California office managing services, which was me, to up to almost 20 employees in less than 2 years. From there, I moved to overseeing all of our customer-facing teams, and then finally and currently, I'm the product director for Insights, helping shape the future of customer validation and the CenterCode platform. Today, what we're going to be talking about is what skill sets are required to be the best CV professional you can be. What I want to hammer home today is that there are 5 key roles or hats that a CV professional wears in their day-to-day operations. Each of those hats has a specific set of skills attached to it that are necessary to be a successful and effective CV professional. Then finally, we'll walk through a day in the life of a CV professional, and I'll show you how each of these hats plays its part in the day of a CVP. So let's get started by talking about the problem, or the challenge, right? Customer validation as a concept has been around for a while. The idea of testing products with real customers in real environments is not new. What is new, however, is the formalization of the customer validation methodology. Officially, customer validation evaluates the stability, satisfaction, and adoption of a technology product before launch and throughout maturity by leveraging real customers using the products in real environments over time. As a discipline, it's still in its infancy. More companies are becoming aware of the value of customer validation and how necessary it is to ensure not only a successful product and release, but to ensure a positive brand association with quality products. And it's those products that are becoming more complex, more connected, and more mainstream, resulting in a need for products that just work. Given the complexities and importance, it's difficult to know where to start developing a CV program within an organization. Often companies are just winging it, making assumptions and forging their own path. This leads to bad habits like 20-question issue report forms, which can be extremely difficult to break those habits, let me tell you, especially when your team starts relying on receiving data in that format. Because the industry is still in its earliest stages, there aren't very many resources or how-tos about customer validation just yet. CenterCode's working on this, but as such, companies are aware of the need for CV, but they struggle with the implementation, often handing it to their product teams to deal with, and those product teams are already overworked. When CV gets put on the product team's shoulders, the product manager generally maintains ownership, and instead of handing it off to their already swamped engineering team, they take it on themselves, opting to trudge through the often intimidating processes and workload associated with getting CV right. As a result of product management running their own CV tests, corners understandably get cut. They don't have the extra time or attention to give to properly plan and execute a true customer validation test. A CV professional wears so many hats on a day-to-day basis that simply the act of switching focus from their product management duties to the CV duties would eat up valuable and likely very expensive time. When you have bad CV processes and practices and cut corners, what do you get? Well, for starters, you're likely going to miss key bugs or issues. For example, if you don't take enough time to plan your test and map out your product for your testers, they may miss a show-stopping issue in an area of the product that may not be used or visited often. As a result of that, you get higher return rates, negative reviews on Amazon, and bad word of mouth about your product and your brand. But not all organizations are dumping CV on the product manager. Some have established experts, and some realize that there's a need for someone to take this on. These companies start by hunting for people who have experience managing pre-release feedback trials, aka customer validation tests. When companies are hunting for these specific types of professionals in a newly formalized industry, they'll naturally start looking for similar roles to hire from. Let's think about what other roles might have some similar or overlapping skill sets. In the case of CV, we can look at support for day-to-day interactions with end users. We can look at QA for test planning and execution and technical knowledge about the product. We can look to marketing for communication and organizational skills, or customer experience for market research and data analysis. But these skills are only partially aligned with all that a CV professional needs to manage. A CV professional needs a wide variety of skill sets because of the various stages and responsibilities on a test or project. They have many hats to wear over the course of a test. Lacking key skill sets poses a risk that, if not addressed, could lead to a negative reflection on your organization as a whole. If you put the wrong person in the role of a CV professional and they lack some or all of the skill sets that we're talking about today, here are some of the outcomes that you're risking. Without a good test manager, testers will be frustrated and they won't know what to do or what's going on. You risk low participation. If your CV professional can't communicate well with testers, plans the test poorly, or overloads testers, people will just stop participating. With poorly designed tests and surveys, you end up collecting data you don't need and neglecting to capture the data that you want. Without someone managing stakeholders well, projects will inevitably suffer from scope creep and unhappy stakeholders as a result of being unable to meet their ever-increasing demands. Obviously, if you run a bad test, you've wasted time and money. Think about the shipping costs or incentives or the amount of time that goes into managing feedback. All of that is wasted. At the end of the day, you have higher return rates and dissatisfied customers as a result of a product that wasn't tested well or correctly. There's a lot of risk here, so why aren't more companies putting more focus on developing talent or hiring in this area? Well, it's a pretty unique role that is a combination of several skill sets from other roles, just like we've been talking about. CV professionals are a key part of product development, often driving for the last-minute tweaks that make a product shine, requiring an adaptable professional who can roll with the punches. In order to accomplish their job, they need to be analytical to examine and draw conclusions on data. They need to be empathetic to product organizations who are in crunch mode and testers who volunteer their time to test. They need to be organized to ensure smooth projects stay on schedule, and diligent in the face of an avalanche of potentially negative feedback and increasing workload. During the course of a single day, a CV professional wears many different hats, often swapping between multiple hats multiple times in a day. Today, I want to highlight what those hats are and why they're so important to ensure that they're in your CV professional's collection. A CV professional switches between 5 hats on a given day. First is the project manager hat, required for managing stakeholders, the project, and the schedule. Second, a data analyst hat, required for gathering, reviewing, and analyzing feedback and trends. Third is a storyteller's hat. Getting product teams to care about results can be a challenging experience. You need a storyteller to frame the results in an engaging and inspiring way. Fourth, a fixer's hat. Expect the unexpected. Tests delay all the time and lots of other things can get crazy. Having a fixer who has a plan B, C, D, E, etc. will help you find creative solutions to your challenges. Fifth and finally, you have a bartender's hat. And this one seems a bit silly, but you have to remember, results from CV tests aren't always positive. In order to give your product teams bad news, you need someone to be the shoulder to cry on and prevent the product team from making impulsive decisions based on negative feedback from a small handful of testers, for example. So let's talk about each hat in more depth, including how they're relevant, why they're important, and what are some key responsibilities that someone wearing the hat needs to be on top of their game for. We'll start with the project manager. As I'm sure you're aware, the complexities of running customer validation tests require someone who is well organized and is able to maintain efficient processes and schedules under pressure. As a project manager in CV, managing multiple stakeholders, whether they be internal clients, testers, executives, etc., and ensuring their needs are met are key jobs served by this skill set. In addition, ensuring all stakeholders are fulfilling their obligations is an important facet of this role. Additional key skills required from the PM skill set include ensuring that everything proceeds on schedule and that everyone's expectations are set correctly. Setting incorrect expectations can be disastrous for the project and for stakeholders, as everyone will inevitably be disappointed when the expectations, however wrong they may be, are not met. Finally, change management ensures that scope creep is avoided and any changes that the stakeholder wishes to make to the project are vetted and recorded in the correct places. So with that in mind, here are some important areas where a project manager's skill set comes in handy during a CV test. Being able to organize and run tests with multiple phases, tester segmentations, and multiple stakeholders is a daunting task. PM skills are necessary to maintain stability throughout the project. Stakeholder management is like herding cats. You're constantly trying to make sure that everyone has what they need and is able to communicate to you what they want. In addition, being able to effectively communicate your expectations to testers is a key step to encouraging sustained engagement. The schedule of a test usually changes at least once after you kick everything off. Having project management skills will pay off here in that as a CV professional, you can ensure things stay on track, even with scheduling hiccups. Finally, communicating with stakeholders and testers is a fundamental part of the CV process. Without good communication skills, tests will fall apart very quickly, as testers won't know what to do, and stakeholders will be annoyed and frustrated with you and the process. Next is the data analyst hat. Throughout the course of a test, testers are engaging with the product and test, and then they provide you feedback. That feedback then needs to be carefully reviewed and analyzed to look for trends and time-sensitive items to respond to. With the data analyst hat on, the focuses are data, feedback, and metrics from the test and product. Collecting feedback is a fundamental part of customer validation, and without data analysis skills, as a CV professional will struggle to achieve their goals in this area. One of those goals is to generate actionable recommendations for your internal stakeholders in the project. By actionable, I mean that the product team has a clear direction on how to act on that recommendation. In other words, improve the setup process isn't an actionable recommendation, but recommending that they fix a specific and detailed issue is, or recommending a specific improvement backed by data and other trends from testers is an actionable recommendation as well. Now here are the areas where a data analyst skill set will come in handy. First, quickly analyzing data is crucial to staying on task, so being able to do it efficiently and while ensuring you don't miss anything is important. Being able to identify and talk about any insights and trends you uncover within the data is incredibly valuable. Between product usage metrics, product feedback, and survey responses, there's plenty of data from which to uncover these insights and trends. As you know by now, part of a customer validation test is providing actionable recommendations to your internal stakeholders so that they can make impactful improvements to the product in question. Without the ability to develop these recommendations, you leave the product improvement direction to the dev team, which is generally not a good thing. Don't forget, though, that part of providing actionable recommendations is being able to point to data to show how or why you've reached your conclusion. Showing just how impactful a recommendation can be will help you, the CV professional, build credibility. Delivering actionable recommendations tactfully is an art that those with the storyteller skill set definitely excel at. Let's face it, data and insights are not always the most exciting thing to talk about. Your feedback might indicate the need to make changes that you're simply not prepared to make, or the feedback could just plain be boring. For example, I don't like the color choice of this button in this particular area of the product. The story that the data tells can even sometimes be earth-shattering for the product team. We've had many products that we've helped test get canceled. And frankly, I say that as a point of pride because we help these companies save money by showing that they shouldn't continue to invest money in a product that's not meeting their target market's needs. When you have limited testing resources like limits on the number of units, or for confidentiality reasons, you only want to invite a small group of testers to your project, you may only get a limited data set. From that limited data set, a CV professional needs to have the skill set to analyze and build an interesting and compelling story around the actual recommendations coming from that small data set. Delivering results can be a fun experience, especially when the results are positive, or if there's an interesting and unexpected insight to be delivered. However, sometimes the story that needs to be told is not a positive one. In those situations, having someone with the ability to motivate and excite the product team despite the negative feedback is extremely important in avoiding having a team of developers who would just ignore customer validation findings. Now, these are some of the areas where the storyteller skill set really shines. First, communicating effectively and professionally is helpful for managing stakeholders and testers and ensuring that the CV professional is seen as the authority on the test and on customer validation as a whole. By building that credibility, the CVP is positioned to have more sway with the product and development teams later on. As we've been discussing, the more important aspect of the storyteller skill set is the ability to synthesize hard, disparate data into a compelling narrative that inspires and motivates the whole team to build an out-of-this-world product. If a CV professional isn't able to maintain and inspire the product team to address these issues, then the product team will tend to disregard the CVP's recommendations, and a subpar product will be released, resulting in further demotivation and potential backlash on the CVP. Delays and the unexpected are inevitable in the customer validation world. When things go wrong on a test, you need to not only be able to rely on your CVP to know what to do, but they need to be your fixer. You want to make sure that they are your fixer that can arrive on scene and direct efforts to get things back on track. So we'll acknowledge here that things go wrong all the time on tests, and when things go wrong, you need a backup plan. For example, when it comes to recruiting, at CenterCode, if our initial outreach efforts are insufficient, we have several options to fall back on to ensure that we're able to meet our stakeholders' needs. We have an ambassador program, we have referrals from the testers that we've recruited already on the test, and we can even expand to outside recruiting. Part of why you'd want a fixer skill set for a CVP is that they need to be constantly identifying risks to the success of the project. Identifying risks early is key to developing your response plans. In addition to identifying risks, inventing solutions to challenging problems may be necessary throughout the course of the test. These solutions may end up not being one size fits all. They may require out-of-the-box thinking in order to overcome a particularly challenging issue. For example, we were testing a hardware product that enabled streaming content from your home computer to your mobile device. We needed to ensure testers could stream from a busy place and really check that experience in terms of performance in that situation. We were concerned that just asking testers to go to a coffee shop or some other crowded area to complete the activity wasn't going to motivate them enough. In order to encourage participation, we bought $10 Starbucks gift cards and provided them to testers, telling them to buy coffee on us when they go to complete their testing activities. We ended up having only a handful of non-compliant testers and even received some emails thanking us for the Starbucks card. It's these types of situations that the fixer can really be helpful in. At the end of the day, the main goal is to ensure a successful test. The fixer skill set helps to ensure that no matter what happens, the product still receives pre-release feedback from the target market. Here are some areas where the fixer's skill set is absolutely necessary. The fixer's job is to have a backup plan. They need to be able to swoop in and save the day by enacting whatever contingencies they've established. A CV professional is faced with complex problems every day. Without a fixer skill set, solutions to those problems might not come right away or at all. Fixers have creativity and finesse to ensure a successful test gets executed. When feedback is starting to wane or the quality is dipping, the fixer can command and motivate a group of testers to help ensure actionable feedback continues to flow. Finally, we have the bartender's hat. And you might be thinking, bartender, is the CVP serving drinks to the product team now? No, they're not, but the bartender's people skills are very valuable to a CVP who's dealing with a failing product. As we all know, again, test results can be exciting, but they can also be devastating or discouraging. Sometimes the team just doesn't get it right, and when that's the case, and the world, or at least a subset of the world, is saying that a product's just not viable, it can be a tough pill to swallow. In those cases, the CV professional is typically the one to break the news. Inevitably, the product owners will be disappointed and maybe even upset. If you'd spent months, sometimes years, working on a product only to get told that it should be canceled, you probably want to throw something across the room. Or even cry. And when the product owners need a shoulder to cry on or a therapist to talk to, the CV professional can fill that role. As a CV professional, it's their duty to have empathy for the product owner, but they should also look to be the motivator that lifts the product team up and encourages the team to march on. Here's where the bartender skills set really shines, and some of these areas we've already discussed a little bit. First, product owners are under a lot of stress. The bartender skill set encourages a CVP to listen to and empathize with the product owner's troubles. Hopefully, as the messenger, you're not the one who ends up shot, but being the bearer of bad news is an unfortunate position to be in as a customer validation professional. It's one of the downsides of being in the business of delivering feedback, both positive and negative. Testing isn't always exciting. Testers sometimes need some extra motivation via words of encouragement or positive communication. So while wearing the bartender hat, the CV professional should be a cheerleader for the testers to keep them motivated and engaged in providing feedback. Finally, the bartender hat should inspire and motivate the product team to do great things. The product owner is stressed enough. As the CVP, you can take some of the stress off of their plate and help to inspire the product team to build a great product with all the great feedback they're getting, both positive and negative. Now, at this point, you may be feeling intimidated or overwhelmed by the sheer number of skill sets I'm shoving in your face, thinking in your head, that's a lot of hats. But I'd like to reinforce that while it may seem over the top, these types of skills are necessary and deficiencies actually have resulting consequences. In the end, it's not only the team that suffers because of the lack of the skill sets, but the products themselves and their potential success. So with that in mind, let's look at what happens when you lack one of the skill sets we've been discussing. Without a project manager, things will go off track very quickly. The scope starts to change, ever increasing in workload and decreasing in the time available to complete it. The schedule falls apart. When the schedule starts to slip, deadlines get missed, the launch date goes whizzing by, and action items fall by the wayside. For example, while running our service projects in the past, the teams weren't using meeting minutes or a record after a meeting of the action items coming out of it. And that meant that things were constantly getting missed. Then once we started using those meeting minutes, something we picked up once we'd hired an actual real project manager to come on board the team, our customers were happier because we were more reliably recording and following up on the action items that were important to them. Without a data analyst skill set, key insights, trends, or recommendations are missed because the feedback and raw data are not being reviewed by a trained eye. Typically, data analysts understand how to gather good data, and bad survey writing is one of the most common ways that programs get bad data. And as a result of that data, they make poor product decisions. If stakeholders or executives inquire deeper into the reporting or recommendation that you've given them, and that CV professional or you can't respond confidently and succinctly, those stakeholders are probably going to lose confidence in the CV professional's ability to understand and report on those results of the projects. And that's probably going to risk the program's viability and sponsorship by those executives. When a CV professional is missing the storyteller skill set, the CVP will fight an uphill battle trying to convince the development team on the results of the test. They may make good recommendations, but by not communicating them well and in a compelling way, the product and development teams won't be inclined to pay attention. Similarly, the product team may not be inspired to solve the issues the CVP brings to the table. Storytelling is an art, and if not told in a compelling way, the product and development teams might deprioritize a recommendation if it wasn't communicated well enough. If the CVP can't compile a coherent narrative flow for their reports, stakeholders are liable to miss key insights while they trudge through the poorly organized report trying to understand the results. Everyone needs a fixer. Without the fixer skill set, here are the risks that are being taken. When the CVP has to map out a plan B on the fly because the product isn't working correctly, valuable testing time is lost, and the testers are going to leave along with that time. By not having a fixer skill set, it means the CV professional will be tied to the box. In other words, they aren't able to think beyond the process or outside of the box. A CV professional needs to be able to operate both with processes and outside of processes. As a result of the challenges that the CVP isn't able to fix, the project or program loses budget and loses the respect of peers and leadership. Lastly, without the bartender skill set, the opportunity to develop a good rapport with stakeholders is diminished when a CVP can't connect with their stakeholders on a personal level. Without the bartender to bounce ideas off of and sulk about negative results, the product team could make impulsive decisions based on only a handful of negative data points. The bartender skill set helps ensure a steady hand is guiding the team back to reality. Finally, as we've discussed, feedback can be pretty negative. If the results are overwhelmingly negative, the product team can become discouraged and slow down or even halt development. The bartender skill set helps ensure that the CVP is equipped to take charge of the situation and help the product owner plot a course forward. So we've talked about the 5 hats of a CV professional is wearing in their role and the risks that come with lacking those hats or skill sets. I realize that developing or hiring for these skills seems like a daunting task, but it's really not that crazy. It's not as crazy as it sounds. Many of these skill sets are common among adjacent departments, so it's simply a matter of developing the right areas. In order to better understand how often these roles or hats are being swapped in a day, we're going to walk through a day in the life of a CV professional and see how these skill sets are put into practice. In this example, I'll play the role of the CV professional. So I start my day at 8 a.m. I get into the office and grab my coffee and get situated at my desk and pop on my project manager's hat. While I've got this hat on, I'm going to get a high-level overview of my ongoing projects. I'll be looking at survey completion progress, any blocking issues that have come in, and take a look at the support requests. Then I'll check in on the feedback that came in overnight. Once I see that we received quite a bit of feedback overnight, I take off my project manager hat and put on my data analyst hat. At this point, I'm going to process the feedback, cleaning it up for our stakeholders, identifying trends in the feedback, and as I work through it. Then I go to my Omega project and build out a report of the results from the survey that closed yesterday. While I'm in the middle of analyzing the survey results and correlating feedback for recommendations, I receive a call from the product manager on Project Tango. He's freaking out that there are 6 unique blocking issues that have cropped up that they weren't really expecting. 3 of these issues are affecting about half the testers. So in this case, I pop on my bartender hat and listen to him on the phone while he tells me about his concerns. I tell him that things are rough right now, but that we're going to ensure things get back on track. I get off the call, and at 10:45, I pop my fixer hat on. With my fixer hat on, I go to work developing a plan to get the test back on track. The dev team in this time is going to address the more impactful, frequent blocking issues first to get those testers going, up and running, and then I'm going to develop a plan to keep testers engaged while the dev team is working. In this case, I'll be building out a survey and sending out a short survey about their initial experiences on the test and some additional information we'd like to learn from the testers. Then it's lunchtime. After lunch, I get back to my desk and pop on my storyteller hat. I have to present a report to stakeholders on the Gamma project, telling the story about their product's onboarding process and how testers are getting through it without issue, but that there are some key improvements that could be made. I work my magic to motivate the product team to jump on the improvements, letting them know the exact impact that they'll have on their product's star rating scores. At 2:30, I have to put on my data analyst hat back on and continue triaging and processing feedback that had been reported since this morning. Then I begin to response code the survey I reviewed the results for earlier. At 4:15, I get an email about a delay coming up on Project Omega. I take off my data analyst hat and put on my fixer hat again. The delay is going to be about 3 weeks. So I begin to build out a plan for keeping testers who we've already recruited and who are already on board the test, a plan to keep them engaged. Once I'm done for the day, I'm going to hang out my hats and get ready to do it all again the next day. So now we've covered what types of roles a CV professional plays throughout their day, why they're important, and what happens when those skill sets aren't in the repertoire. If you're looking to hire a CV professional, however, start by searching for these skill sets when hiring. This may seem obvious, but you have to start somewhere. If you need to hire internally, look to pull people from support, from QA, from marketing, from customer experience as a starting point. Those roles are going to have the most overlapping skill sets with the CV professional. It probably goes without saying, but if you're hiring and you find someone with these skill sets that rocks at customer validation, try to keep them. Ensure that you have competitive compensation and aren't overloading the individual so as to detract from their ability to deliver quality work. So let's recap what we've discussed today. Ideal CV professionals have a combination of unique skill sets: project manager, data analyst, storyteller, fixer, and bartender. And these skill sets enable CV professionals to effectively manage and organize projects, consume, analyze, and present data in an engaging way, motivate and inspire product teams, anticipate and have plans for unexpected issues, and empathize and celebrate with stakeholders. With these abilities, you'll be rolling out higher quality, better reviewed products that delight your target markets. Thanks a lot, everyone. I'll be in the chat for the next half hour to answer any questions that you might have. I look forward to chatting with you guys. Have a good rest of your day. See you later.